I just want to start by thanking the Cornerstone for providing the picnic. They did a really good job. Thank you, Cornerstone, very, very much. It was very nice. And it wasn't what it was intended to be, a picnic. The only thing that we're missing is you can already remember those great big pails, not pails, but they were like vats covered in like stuffing we dipped ice cream out of? We always had ice cream cones, but that's impossible. So again, I want to welcome all of you. You don't know how great this is to see all these Bailey's Harbor students gathered in one place after so many years. Susie Baldry said to me, if you ever get a bright idea like this again, don't let me know. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun. And just getting in contact with you and your response was exceedingly wonderful. So thank you for coming. This is your program. So tonight, as we're showing these pictures on the PowerPoint, we want your input. If you have a memory about a certain person or place, please share it with the rest. You can keep your remarks brief because there's a lot of people here, but this is your program, so please feel free to speak. And I also want to begin because I have some thanks to special people. This event is put on by the Bailey's Harbor Historical Society, and we haven't been in existence that many years, but it's a powerful force in this town, and we are so glad that you have shown your support for it. As you can see, we do have red baskets on the table. The only thing you paid for was the meal, and we had a lot of expenses. And we are a 501(c) corporation, so anything you donate is tax deductible. So again, thank you for coming, and your donations are also appreciated. I want to thank the board. I want to thank Leanne Despodes, who's the president of our association, Roy Cole, Phil Graupner, Nancy Rafal, Howard Williamson, Mary Moran, Marianne Newton, Carol Schmidt, Steve Hay, and also John Newton, Marianne's husband, who is helping today. And if I've forgotten anybody, my apologies, but thank you, board. You have been behind this whole thing all the way, and we needed that whole board support to do this. Not one, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank my wonderful husband, Everett, who is for putting up with all this for the last 6 months. He put everybody's name on the mailing list, and it's been a long road for him. So he is very glad that the day has finally arrived, and also to, thank you, Everett. And I also want to thank my son-in-law, who put everybody's name in the initially on the mailing list and got it all together for me and got all the mailing labels. It was a big job. I want to thank this town. I want to thank the town of Bailey's Harbor. I want to thank Haley and Ray and for their endless patience, because I was in their office every day of the week making copies, and they were very, very helpful. I also want to thank all of the people that work for the Bailey's Harbor town, Ryan Weisgerber and Robert Ohlenberg. Those are names we all know, aren't they? And now they work for the town. They got tables down and put all the tables outside in case it was a sunny day, but will we ever have a sunny day again? And I want to thank my good friends Tom and Joyce Beyer, who came from Green Bay to take photographs of all of you, because we want a group picture of everybody. And they're also taking candid pictures also of people if they want them taken. I want to thank Christy and Caleb Pyle for opening up the school for us. They said that tonight, or not tonight, but later this afternoon, if you want to go and tour the classrooms that are open. As you know, it is now a hotel motel, but some of the people will have checked out, and you'll be able to tour some of those rooms. Their only request is that they have a bench outside to put your shoes on, because with all the rain, you know, it would be a mess. So thank you, Christy and Caleb, for opening up the school. And they also said we can have our picture taken there in the front of the school, but I don't know if that's going to happen because rain is moving in again by the latest weather forecast. So, and again, most of all, I thank all of you for taking the time to come today. You know, that wonderful saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a town to put on an event like this. So we are just so happy that you could all make it. I think, you know, what this turnout is proof of is that our childhood memories are very, very important, and especially our Bailey's Harbor Grade School memories. Because in talking to just a few of you, and I wish I had more time to get around to each of you, you have wonderful stories to tell. And so many of you, I want to thank so many of you for providing the memorabilia we have up here. And I have a list of your names. I want to thank Bob Apple, who was also one of the teachers at Bailey's Harbor, Susie Baldry, Sandy Zock Kepsel, Mike Barnowski brought pictures tonight, Christy Bergwin, Margarine Bergwin-Letty, Kristen Pyle, and anyone else here who was Leanne. Thank you, Leanne. Don't forget Leanne. Leanne Despodes brought pictures also. And I was just thinking here, Visties, the Visti family. They came through, and at the very last minute, Jay even brought me Ernal Visti's, I think it was his nameplate. Was it off the door? It's up on the wall there. So thank you, thank you. And if I've missed any of you, my pardon. I know I have a whole list of names of people that to be thanked. And Linda Sabasi Kelly, too. I think her daughter might be here today. She also gave me things. So thank you, one and all, for doing that. I just want to also say that before we begin our program, I'm not going to go into a long, lengthy dissertation here because we have a PowerPoint, but I want to say that I would like to honor two very special people who are in attendance today. And they are the two teachers that did respond and are here today. And one is Darlene Duquesne Myers. Where are you, Darlene? Okay, would you please stand up, Darlene? And I would also like Bob Apple. Where are you, Bob? Okay, they're in the same place. Okay, can you get them? Okay. Thank you for your presence, Bob. In fact, his quilt is on the wall there. He made that with his students. We have a couple gifts to give you, Bob and Darlene, so Eva will deliver them to your table so you don't have to walk up. Thank you. And I want to also pay special attention and honor our two oldest, youngest students. They are Irene Steinke Pyle. And Irene, would you be able to stand up for everybody to see you, please? And you can leave them there. I'll just tell them. Hold it up. Just hold it there. And the next nonagenarian is, where is Betty Olson Anderson? Hey, Betty. As you all know, Betty and Bob owned the Bailey's Harbor Laundry for many years. We have, before you leave, we have a plant for each of you. Okay. Okay, now we just have two other little prizes. We have a host of door prizes, and you'll all have an opportunity to win those. But I want to give a gift to the people who came the farthest, and after carefully evaluating, because there are people from Florida, Pennsylvania, Fargo, North Dakota, it is going to go to Sharon Barnowski Kessel. They came from Fort Myers, Florida, and her husband, Tom. So we have a gift for them also. They're sitting way down in the middle. Put your hands up, please. There. Thank you. And we also have a gift, and we can't recognize this person. It's the person who came the shortest distance from Bailey's Harbor School, and that's me. Because I live right next door. And because I can't recognize me, we decided to recognize the people that we got the first response from. And that is Dan and Sherry Croas. So see, it pays to be early in getting your response in. And I just want to say that I wish I had a prize for him. He might win a door prize, But Lee Erickson just came up to me before. He's got all 8 years of his grade school reports. His grade cards are up, and he's got them here. I think that's pretty special to have all 8 years of his report cards. So, oh, Susie said she had hers too. Okay, I think now that we've recognized these very special people, we are going to begin our program. And we are going to start with our PowerPoint program, and I'm going to have Leanne come up here because she's actually our Bailey's Harbor historian. She doesn't always want to be, but that's what she ends up being. So she's going to start off with a little bit about the history of the Bailey's Harbor School.
I made notes. Is this going? Oh, okay, here. I made some notes so I wouldn't forget. And I don't want to take too long because there's so much yet to be, to go through. But I'm sorry to say this, but this whole 100th anniversary thing is pretty much a fraud. Because the Bailey's Harbor School started actually in 1858. And it started as a little school, probably looked something like that. There are no pictures of it. I found this online, same time period in Michigan, and I thought, well, there's probably a lot of similarity there. The way we found out a little bit more about the school was the Advocate in 1962 did a lot of those, centennial articles. And Emma Toft and John W. Brand, not the John Brand of John and Claire Brand, but his father, wrote articles talking about the school in Bailey's Harbor. And they didn't attend this little school, but they knew more about it because they were just closer to it in time. They attended, I almost forgot about this, notes and all. The county in general took a really serious attitude toward the local schools. And when you look back in these ancient Advocates and other county newspapers, you'll see that every month the county superintendent made his report, and he would visit schools and write about particular schools and say, well, Miss Jones' school was in very good order today, and her students are learning to do long division and whatever. And he would be very frank in his evaluations. And one of the achievements you could make was to be on the monthly Roll of Honor, which required what you see up on your screen there: perfect recitations, no reprimands, perfect attendance, never tardy. And there were a number of children in Bailey's Harbor in 1871. 6 students qualified, and they were listed in the Advocate. If you were if you were one of those achievers, you were listed in the paper. Included a Carrington child, a Lalamont, a Wright, a Kilgore, and I guess I didn't write all 6 names well, but those are names that we kind of recognize as being prominent in the history of the town. Attendance was often sporadic, because the older kids had to go work when the weather was bad. Sometimes they couldn't get to school. And it wasn't a 9-month school year like we had. It was much more sporadic, and the teachers were always, lobbying, trying to find ways to get the attendance up and to get it constant, so it wasn't too easy. One of our teachers way back in the first school up there started a club for the adults called the Lakeside Lyceum. And the people, I think, of that day, most of the people didn't have opportunities like we do. We take it all for granted. You go to grammar school, you go to high school, and, a whole big percentage of our kids go on to some further education, whether it's college or training or whatever. But back at that time, that wasn't the case. And the adults in the village were as interested in improving themselves as they wanted as much as they wanted their children to do well. So the teacher organized the Lakeside Lyceum, and they put on plays and did poetry, they did readings, they did all that sort of thing. They would charge a small fee for people to watch them, and they put this fee toward an organ. They bought an organ, and you would see in the paper when they'd advertise, they would say, like, the little offering, is going to go for this organ. And Emma Toft remembered in her writings in that Advocate article that, yes, there was an organ in that school. So, when you picture the little log put together school, but it had an organ, it's kind of amazing to me. The next school was this school that was built in 1878. And that's around where the Catholic Church parking lot was. That was, it became eventually, I think my next slide, in 1887, they added a section on, and this just says that the school board is receiving bids for an addition on the schoolhouse, which gives you an idea of the number of children. Families had a lot of children, and there were a lot of young families in town. And it says here, and also Professor Longemak, who was the teacher, he also gave classes for 8th grade graduates to learn about teaching so that they could become teachers. You couldn't go off to normal school or college, and every little place had its own school. Like, if you just think of us, we consolidated with Pershing, with Peninsula Center, with North Bay School, and there was Woodland School and Liberty Grove School. There were schools everywhere. And to staff those schools, people weren't going to come from, a university in the city and come and teach in a one-room school in the middle of a cornfield. That wasn't going to happen very often. So they trained them here. And John Brand was trained that way. In fact, many of the people you've heard of in the history of the town did teach school for a while up here. I know my Uncle Lester, John Brand, Mike McCardle, people that we've heard of. I think it was kind of like a way to get a little money together, and then a lot of them went off and went on to university afterwards. But their training just came in these little tiny 1 or 2 room grammar schools, which I found pretty interesting. Eventually, rural teaching certificates were given out by normal schools. You've all heard of that, right? And probably, if you went to Bailey's Harbor School, I know I graduated in 1959, and I never had a teacher that had a bachelor's degree. They all had the 2-year normal school degrees, and they were doggone good, I must say. I think, maybe that Darlene Duquesne back there, she might have eventually had to go back for her bachelor's. I don't remember. But I know my mother got hers when she was, like around 1958 or something like that. And if you're interested, her normal school teaching diploma is back there, and also her grammar school diploma, with a perfect attendance certificate signed by Emma Toft, who was her teacher back in the day. Sorry. In the second school, one of the teachers that I found mentioned really, really frequently was a teacher named J.W. Kinsell. And he did the teaching of the graduate school work, as John Brand called it, to become a teacher. And he was very, very firm. And Emma Toft said that in the morning when he'd get the kids there, he had to be super strict because there were so many children. He was like, for $65 a week, I think he had to wrangle 60 to 100 kids by himself until they added on to the school, if you could even imagine that. But he was very strict. And so every morning, they would start their day singing, "Tramp, tramp, tramp, the boys are marching." And they would all march around the school, you know, in formation and so forth. And he also ran a cheese factory. And sometimes, because there wasn't enough money teaching school, you know, to support your family, so he also had a cheese factory. And sometimes, like in the middle of the day, he'd take students with him, and they'd do whatever you have to. I don't know what you do to cheese in a cheese factory, but I guess there's a timing on it. So they would go over and, you know, take care of that, and then they'd come back and finish the school day. And he also was known for, and I just love this, at Christmas time, he'd have raisins for the kids, which I think weren't so common then. And he would always put them in a fairly narrow-neck jar so that the little kids could get the most raisins because their little hands, you know, go all the way in. But the big kids couldn't get at them. They could only get like 1 or 2 or 3. I thought that was kind of clever. He was also the man who had the dubious honor of, in 1889, when the town had the terrible diphtheria epidemic, it was he who went to Sturgeon Bay to buy coffins for the children because so many children had died within a week or two that the town ran out of coffin supplies. He had to go down there to get more. It was a very sad time. Well, that second school went on for quite a while. But in December 1916, in the morning, the primary room teacher saw smoke coming up through the floorboards and realized there was fire. She got her little ones out, got a hold of Sam Londo, who was the principal of the school, and he evacuated his kids. They rang the bell. They blew the mill whistle at Pruder's Mill, and the kids were dispatched throughout the town to bring people to help, and everybody came, and it was so noisy, even the Coast Guard men, you know, across the bay came and helped. And they thought they had it out. They established there must have been a long, long bucket brigade reaching from the water to the Catholic Church parking lot. And they thought they had it out. They had the basement pretty well out. And then somehow the roof caught fire, and all was lost. They couldn't deal with it. And only thing that remained later on was just a chimney and a small wall. While it was still smoldering, though, you know, when they realized all was lost, they still could get in. It was smoky. It said the parents, the teachers, and the children all went in and grabbed everything they could get out of the building. Now, can you even imagine in this day? First of all, sending the children out to get help wouldn't happen. Children going into a burning building to try and save their school supplies, I mean, you would be arrested for encouraging actions like that, I think. So they got what they could. The children went to the old town hall, which is where the post office is now. And they went to school there until after the winter holidays in 1917, the same year that they built the school. And that's where the 100th anniversary comes in. This is really the 100th anniversary of the building of this school building in Bailey's Harbor. But it seemed like a really good way to get a reunion going, so it worked for us. And they, I think in September of 1917, they saw the first load of lumber coming in to do the school. And by Christmas time, it was ready. And in January, they took up their residence in that school. And in March, everybody got together in town and had a meeting. They had about $2,500 to pay off on the building, and they had a meeting to figure out how they could get that all paid off as soon as possible. The school that burned was worth about $4,000, but they had $2,000 of insurance on it. So I imagine they put that with, you know, the remainder. And I haven't found the end of that discussion in the papers, but I guess it probably got paid off pretty quick. People took it seriously. The schooling was very, very important to them, and especially to the people who came here who who never had the opportunity to do anything more in school than maybe learn how to read and write a little bit. So it's, I think the public schools are what built this country myself, but I don't know if everybody agrees, but I think it makes some kind of sense. So it continued as a two-room school for a long, long time. And then in 1954, I'm sure a lot of you, I know quite a few of you, had school with me here at the town hall for 3rd and 4th grade. And they built the new addition onto the school. And then we became the first 4-room rural school in Wisconsin. And I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Which is, took longer than I meant. I'm sorry.
That's why we let Leanne be the historian, because she always does such good research on everything. Okay, so we're up here to 1916. So let's see who's, I'm sure none of us recognize any of these people. So we might as well go on to the next picture, although I think probably Carl Pyle, my uncle, and Wally Pyle might have been on here, and some of your forebears also might have been on here. Okay. Your mother was on there too? Okay. Lenore, a lot of brands. Okay. Well, that's the school as it was and when they built it. And you can see now how different it is with the addition on. But it was a very, it's a very good-looking school. And we're lucky. Sister Bay is gone. Egg Harbor School is gone. Fish Creek School is gone. There's not many rural schools left anymore. So we're lucky, Bailey's Harbor, that we still have our building. Okay, this is 1917. As you can see, it's still at the old town hall. And that would be a lot of our, my mother's age people. I know that Carl Pyle is on there, and I know Walter Pyle is on there. Your mom is on there. Was Emma Zahn one of the teachers? I mean, Emma Tuft? Would you no?
That would still be Sam Londo and
okay.
Ms. Jameson.
Miss Jameson, Sam Londo, okay. Aha. Now we're getting closer. And Leanne copied off the 1935 children on this picture. Bottom row, Bill Wiesa, Bob Sorensen, Bernard Kwiatkowski, Orville Vakes, Raymond Whipple, Albert Schultz, Don Duquesne, and Bill Schultz. Bottom row. Second row, Glenn Anderson. I know these names are familiar to many of you. Wally Burlow, Charles Tischler family, Louis Burlow, Jack Anklem, Darrell Zibney, Alan Toslin, and Ray Hartwig. So I'm sure people recognize those names. Beverly Anklem in the next row. Irene Ripple, Beverly Anklem, Marie Hayfert, Betty Jorns, Ethel Kwiatkowski, Irma Tischler, Bernice Hartwig, Donna Zibney, Virginia Jacobson. Ernest Visti, 1935. How many years, I wonder, was he already teaching at that time in 35? He taught for 43 years, so quite a while. Mildred Hickey is another teacher up there. Would that be relation to Dennis Hickey? Mildred Hickey? Carol Hayford. Oh, is that what it would be? Okay, second cousin. Ruby Sorensen, Catherine McCardle, Juanita Mann, Henrietta Schultz, and Mildred Schultz. So that was the class of 35. 37. So you can recognize any of those people on that picture. If anybody's interested, I'm not going to read off everybody's names, but if you're interested in knowing who those people are, I have a list of everybody on that picture.
I can see Orvie Vakes there on the top row.
Yeah, Orvie Vakes is very distinctive. Do you all see that?
I can always recognize
Second from the right. On the top row. Toslin? Okay. 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 Here, I'm going to have Bill Tischler. He can read them up. Can you just tell what you just said, please?
If you
they
know.
want to hear in the back. They want to hear.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Let me see now. In the second row, the fourth young lady, or the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth young lady from the right is my sister, Irma Tischler, and I believe two people down on her left that might be a Jorns. And on the end of that row is Bernice Hartwig, And in the back row, we have, let me see, I think there's a Burlow who's the fourth from the right, Wally, and Orville Vakes the second from the right, and that's about it. Oh, that's, okay.
Who was that just said something? Okay. That kind of, okay.
Bill, do you recognize Beverly Anklam in that top row? Did you know her? Yeah. That's what I think. She's, well, as we look at it, she's on the left of him. Yeah. Okay.
And here, can you make that a little bit larger at all for the names, or is it pretty well? Can you see the names up there? The names are all underneath this picture. Okay. Russell Fleschel, Lee Traven, Jack Jorns, Leo LaRouche, yep. Eleanor Kotersky's up there. Betty Visti. Okay. I see Leland Tischler up there. Bill Batcher. Mm-hmm. Look at the way they're dressed. Look at those hats that all those boys wore in those days, huh? Kind of remember those a little bit. Okay, go ahead. Primary classroom, date unknown. Now, what grade, what room was that up there? The little room?
This would be the room on the north. Yeah, on the right as you came in, it'd be on the north side. Yeah.
Remember those desks with the inkwells in? And I want you to know that as we're showing these pictures, if you have something that you want to add to any of them, please feel free to speak up. Because there'll be some more here that I know you're going to want to speak up about. There's a few I want to speak up about. Yes? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, that was really neat that you could be in the room that he was in for all 8 years. Bob Apple's dad was in the same room for 8 years. And then Bob taught in that room, right? Interesting. Yes? Absolutely. Those pigtails. That was a good reason not to have braids, right? Naughty boys putting your hair in it. Oh, this is one of our favorite pictures. Diane Collins is here today. This is Fern Erickson and Diane Collins on the first day of school in 1950. And that was the year that I entered grade school, too. Diane, do you have that picture? Yeah? And, of course, Fern is, that was their first cousins. Diane and Fern were first cousins. And Fern is Lee Erickson's sister, of course, and she's deceased. It's a great picture, though. Great picture. That was the first day of my entire life going to school that I ever had to wear a dress, I remember. It wasn't much for dresses. Oh, this is the view from the bluff, and there is the infamous merry-go-round. And my memory, my favorite memory of the Bailey's Harbor School is that merry-go-round, because it was Bill Collins that crashed into it. And when he crashed into it, he really cut his mouth, and we were like little vampires. We all went to look at the merry-go-round to see where his skin was, if there was any blood left. All of us kids, Bill, we have never forgotten you running into that merry-go-round on his sled. That's when we went, you could try going as far as you possibly could down that hill. Well, Bill didn't make it far, but Leanne and I were talking the other day, Bill, if this would have happened nowadays, you would have been a millionaire. Because your parents would have probably sued the school, probably the merry-go-round company, and everybody else. So it happened too many years ago, and maybe they wouldn't have sued at all. But in this litigious society, that's what you do. And I said, boy, those people would have a lot of money nowadays, but they took it off very soon thereafter. Then they moved that merry-go-round. I don't know how long, but I think they moved it over to the... Yeah, I'm sure. But isn't that a great picture? Because you can see, you know, Betcher's way in the background there, and you can see the Quonset hut, you know, theater, cinema down there. So it's a good picture. No, your house wasn't even built. No, no, that's a great picture. And Brand's house is down there, though. Yeah, that was a shed on the John property, that shed. Yeah, that's a great picture. Brandfield. Yep, you're right. And which it is, right? Yeah, that's right. It was the old ball location. Now it's a swamp right now with all this rain. The Brand Swamp, right? Talk about draining the swamp, huh? 1956 basketball team. Could all of you basketball players, and you're here tonight, stand up. I want to recognize you. Dave Hubbard. Can you see Dave Hubbard? Can you see Herb Croas? Yay! Ron Stieglitz. Bill Collins. Yeah, Dick Gauze. Bill Becker. Chuck Brand. I mean, it's wonderful that you came today because you can look at all the way you look. Do you think you've changed at all? Look at those smiling faces. Mike Bernowski. Mike Bernowski. Oh gosh. Mike Goss, did you stand up too? I see your picture there too. Terry Simon, of course he's gone. But isn't that a great picture? It's wonderful. I love all your trophies. I didn't know you were such winners. There's a bunch of trophies out there that we put in the showcase, shadow box for you. Okay. Okay, and it's cheerleaders also, 1960. And look at, we have Betty is here. We have Beverly Krovis. We have Sandy Zock Capsule, who is right next to her. Jerry Vakes. Yeah. Come on, you cheerleaders, get up. Not just for the basketball players here. Come on, stand up. Get a hand. They helped the boys win those games. Absolutely. Look at the little Becker boy. That was Paul, right? Paul Becker. That's a great picture. Clyde Johnson. Yep. Do you remember? And if any one of you have any special memories, and I know everyone here can relate to one of these things. The only thing we don't probably have on there, do you remember the goiter pills? Do you remember how we loved those goiter pills? And we looked forward, I think was it Fridays? Right. Monthly goiter pills. And then when they weren't looking, I used to remember going in Earl's room and sneaking in and grabbing a few extra. It was sweet, and we loved them. Those goiter pills made a big hit with all of us. If anybody, oh, and Susie said yes, the chocolate milk on Fridays. Yep. That was a big deal, that chocolate milk on Fridays. But you remember the weekly readers we'd get? I mean, that was a big deal. And don't you remember, we all thought we were stars because we'd have the Christmas programs down here, and we'd get to come down here on this very stage, and we thought we were all really the queens and kings. Yes, Dave.
I was somehow forced to play Santa Claus at one of those programs, and I think it scarred me for the rest of my life, mainly because of my good friends who were relentlessly jiving me and jabbing me during the whole thing.
That's probably why you became a psychologist. That's true. Your early childhood trauma. But it was so good. And the one thing, we're going to have a thing on Earl here, but the one thing is he always made us feel so good. maybe not the boys, but the girls, because we all felt like we were special because we could go and mimeograph his tests and stuff in the office, and so we thought we were real special that way. We were special, but it was a it was a time. We're so lucky to have been born and brought up in this town. Most of us, there was such a freedom that we had as children that they don't have anymore. We'd play by the water, we'd go on the bluff, we'd be running down that hill all the time in the wintertime, and it was a wonderful, wonderful childhood. And Bailey's Harbor Grade School was a large part of making our memories.
Speaking to this list, does anybody remember studying for 8th grade exams and how Mr. Visti had just like that, this thick pages of old exams, and every year he'd get the exams for that year and he'd add it to this, I don't know if it was a book, you really could even call it a book. It was like a monument. And when you had time, you could go sit at the back table and quiz each other on those exams, and you go through years and years, because they never change the textbooks. I mean, there's only so many questions you can get out of a chapter. And I know that certainly was a help to me. I remember, doing well in the exams. Yeah.
I remember the hectograph before the days of Xerox machines, well before. I remember Arnold had his list of duties, one of which was to raise and lower the flag each day. And I can remember when the kids in school during World War II picked milkweed pods, and we'd hung them under the eave of the school. They were used to make Kapok life preservers. And I can remember shoveling coal in the feeder for the furnace in the basement. And I'm not that old anymore.
Definitely you're not all that old. There was something else, too, that I put on this list. That when he would have geography bees, Mr. Visti, and he would have spelling bees. But do you remember when he'd have these bees, and he would not tell you if you made a mistake? And then you'd spell it, how you thought. And then they go to the next person, and they'd spell in different word, different word, different word. But if somebody made a mistake, like in position number 2, and you caught it, and you were like in position number 10, you'd say, okay, I'm going to pick up such and such, and then you spell it right, and you go all the way to the front of the spelling line. I don't know. That sticks in my mind for some reason. It was such a challenge. I don't even know how he thought up some of those things. And somebody said stamps? Was that you? Or what were you?
Well, the stamps issue was, as Bill was saying, we were picking these milkweed pods and stuff like that, and then to reward them at that time, they gave us these war stamps, which we put into a book during the Second World War.
See, I didn't know anything about that. Much too young to know about that. But
When you speak, that was Orville Langer, by the way. Before that, it was Bill Tischler. So when you speak, please tell who you are so people know, okay? Thank you. Okay, go on to the next one now. Yes, so people know who they are.
I'm sorry, but I had to sit for such a long time thinking these things up that I have to make the most of it. Now, I remember this, and I think people in my class or the class above or beneath me might, but in the spring sometimes, Emma Toft would come flying into the school and decide that it was time for us to have a field trip to the Ridges. And I do not think these were ever planned ahead, because the teacher always seemed to look just as surprised as we all were. And she just marches down there and, show us all of the wonders of our favorite, of course, the pitcher plant, because it ate insects. That was the best one. And from her instruction, I will admit that I could not to this day pick a trillium, a lady slipper, without being sure that, the feds would get me if I did. Because I mean, it was in me. I couldn't do it even now. Yeah. So I think that wraps up my little things I had to say.
Those are really good memories, Leanne. You got a lot of those there that we all had that were similar. Leanne, this is her part actually, because she has this in her mind about all the early readers. So why don't you describe your early readers?
Okay, well, I know you must all recognize our first family that we got to know, but I'm just curious, does anybody know who Tim was? Who was that genius? Good job. It was the teddy bear. I didn't know myself. I was trying to, look into things to find some good images and stuff. And yes, and Tim is right there, kind of dangling from baby Sally's hand. Now, it's not the best picture in the world. Well, it's better than I thought. For some reason, I remember the social studies book, and I think its copyright is in the 30s, and I was taking social studies in the 50s, so I'm thinking a lot of people might remember it. I hated it with a purple passion. I just hated reading about this little town. I already lived in this little town. I did not need to read about this little town where really nothing much ever went on. But you can actually read this very book. I found it online on a place called archives.org. And they have digitized whole textbooks from long ago. And I looked at the table of contents here, and one of the sections was actually titled Traveling on a Dirt Road, which led into, who wouldn't want to read that, right? Which led into then they were going to have the road paved and what it took to pave the road, and just gripping. Yeah. Okay. We listened to Let's Sing, remember? Sing the whole day through, don't let your troubles bother you. With Dr. somebody. And it'll come to me, because I know there was another one we used to listen to. Because that's where Let's Sing came from. Because what was it? School of the Air. Yes.
Who said that? Linda, very good, thank you.
Yeah, because rural schools like ours couldn't have a music teacher. Like in a city school, they probably have one, but that would have been an impossibility for such a small school. Yes. Oh. Bill Tischler just said that WMAQ from Menominee, Michigan had a program also called Hands Across the Bay. That sounds familiar somehow. Okay, now we're coming to my favorite geography book, because I had to live through Centerville, which I found, I just didn't care for it. But then we moved up the stairs, and we got into 5th grade, and this is my favorite geography book. Visits and Other Lands. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but again, I'm sure that it was used in the building for at least a decade, I'm sure. Okay, so, and I was in 5th grade in about 55 or 56. And actually, it was not that bad of a book. But I always remembered Netsuk and Klea, the little Eskimo children who lived in an igloo, and Bunga, who lived in Malaysia, and Suvan of the Steppes, which is where I learned what a yurt was, and the strange drink he drank, which I think was called kumis. I don't think we got to visit all the different lands, because that book is very extensive. But again, archives.org, you can read the entire book. You can quiz yourself at the ends of the chapters. I think you should. I think you'd just love it. Now, if you remember all the things that we just discussed, You can tell your grandchildren all kinds of stories about the good old days. That's what I've decided. Okay, you want to?
Okay, that was very good. Leanne remembers a lot more than I do. I don't remember Clay or any of those people. Okay, but this is kind of cool because this is Susie Piles, Young People's Reading Circle. And, you know, I remember that we had those and we read books, and we always had at the library too. We'd come down and we were able to check out books. So that was, reading was very important. Thank you, Susie, for sharing that with us. Anything else on that one? You can go on. Where, am I doing this? I guess go this way. Okay. Certificate of Achievement. Again, Susie Piles featured because she's the one that gave this. And this is a Certificate of Achievement, as you can see. What did you sell, Susie? In recognition of outstanding selling ability and as a reward for achievement in practical sales work. Oh, Susie, you never furthered your career in sales. Here, look at you. You had this illustrious start and you never continued. Right. Probably was. I don't remember. I don't think I ever sold books. All I just remember is that my mother wouldn't let me buy an accordion. I wanted to take accordion lessons. Rural school. Once again, we have Susie Piles, 8th grade results. She's just bragging. That's why she wanted to share that with us. That's what that was about. Yes. And who else brought me one of those today? Yes, I put that up right over there. Thank you, Sandy. Sandy Kepsel brought hers also. It was her mom's. It was Marguerite Zox. She almost flunked agriculture. Poor Marguerite. That would have been a lifelong skill for her, was agriculture. Oh, yes, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, now do you remember this? Do you all remember standing on the steps of St. Joseph's Grade School and having our picture taken? And because this is my picture, I have all the Gibraltar students' heads circled because I wanted everybody to know who the Gibraltar students were at one time. In the front row, there's all of Billy's Harbor. It was Loanne Erickson, Gloria Erickson, Diane Collins, myself, and then Susie Tischler's right in the back there. And those are all the ones that went to Gibraltar. But it was a big day for us. We'd spend the whole day in Sturgeon Bay. And it seems to me didn't they give us tickets for a movie or something? I can't remember, but we spent the whole day. And it was a big deal for us to have 8th grade graduation. County 8th grade graduation. This is where Leanne talks about what a big deal it was. And this was from, what year was it? It must have been back in the early 1910. The steamer Bonamy brought 300 people from the northern end of the county. Washington, Liberty Grove, Gibraltar, and Egg Harbor. While an excursion on the train brought 100 from Forestville and Maplewood. Hundreds came in from the north and south by vehicles of all kinds, wagons, buggies, and autos. The strangers in the city numbering from 800 to 1,000. Flags were displayed in the public buildings in honor of the occasion. And as you know, in 1910, that was the end of their education for a lot of kids. They did not go on to high school. That was their 8th grade, and that was the end. And here is a 1960 elementary school diploma from Sandra Lee Zock. All right, signed by Ernest Visti. He had such a distinctive handwriting. Aha, and this is the 8th grade graduates, a few of who are here tonight, or today. Beverly and Sandy on the end. Is there anybody else here? Oh, and Dale Williams. There you are. Who is that? Oh, yeah, Chuck. Sure, Tommy Gordon. Absolutely. Chuck, I wouldn't have recognized you on that picture. I don't know why. Sonia Turs, I know, is on the right here. And who's the, oh, that's Phyllis, Barbara Phyllis, yes. And is that Susan Johnson there? Right. Jerry Vicks is in the middle there, yes. Dale's daughter, or wife, ex-wife, first wife. His daughter's Lisa. Aha. Now, I want you to look at this, and I want someone to stand up and tell me what this is a picture of. Ah, it's in the woods. It's in the wood. This is where, right up here, I took these pictures because this is where we'd have the most fantastic plays that we could perform. And we always performed, you know, it was this flat area with the trees behind, and we'd always play Cinderella. And then I was always the wicked stepsister who got the toe cut off to fit into the magic slipper. And Leanne remembers playing the creature from the Black Lagoon up there. And this we called the horse tree. This is where we thought, you know, we were on a horse. So we'll just sad to say, no, that wasn't the place. And you know what? I mean, nowadays, kids would not be playing up in the woods. I mean, that's what we did at recess time. I mean, it was a great place to play. We'd climb up on the rocks, and I mean, it was just, you know, you just kind of did what you wanted to. It was a great freedom and all of that. Yes. Yes. Snowball fights and dodgeball, absolutely. Do you all remember Mrs. Hunnell? Martha Hunnell, in her 3rd and 4th grade class. Is anybody here today from that 3rd and 4th grade class, 1959? Okay, who is that back there? Stand up and just, okay. All right, we have a few from that class back there. And that's when you can see where, you know, we had that, our Boy Scout troop, 29 in Bailey's Harbor, am I correct? Was that the troop number? Yeah. It's a nice picture. And that's Mrs. Hunnell with her 64, 65 class. Who's there that can identify themselves? Anybody know? Is anybody there that you can see that you know? Oh, there's a Tursky here on the end. On the right, that's Jeff, isn't it? Okay. I'm too old. I don't recognize those young kids. That's the 4th grade class. And their names are on. Thank you very much for doing that. Linda Seiler, she's here today. Mrs. Werner. Now, I didn't know her. Are any here from Miss Lisa Tischler? Okay. Okay. Jason Baldry. Jason's over here, right? Second from this end, okay. This is Miss Santa Croce or whoever. It's grade 2, 76, 77. We're getting to the later years. Mrs. Otto, grade 3. And that one I do not, no years on that one. Aha, this is a lot about what our school was about. Ernal Visti, everybody here had Ernal as the principal. In fact, he had to be the longest serving rural principal in Wisconsin, because I asked a few people yesterday, I went to that reunion, I asked Egg Harbor, because Lloyd Perry was there for many years, and he was there for 34 years. So Ernal has to be the longest serving principal. And I brought along, because I found it in my paper, when Ernal died in 1987, I had written this to be read at the church if they wanted to, and I guess Reverend Kim Stoll at the time read it. And I think this really sums up Ernal. Today, we gather together to mourn the passing of Bailey's Harbor's most illustrious citizen, but more importantly, we come to celebrate his life and all the wonderful things he represented to us. Many of our families represent 3 generations of students he has taught and who are indebted to him. Along with the 3 R's, Mr. Visti had a 4th one, respect. We learn respect for our peers, our superiors, our elders, and most importantly, ourselves. Mr. Visti knew that no amount of education or learning would make a difference if the basic human values were not instilled at an early age. He taught us, not with words alone, but by example. How proud he must have been to see former students actively engaged in community life, not sitting passively by letting others make decisions for them, but taking a personal interest in the affairs of the community and the larger state and federal governments. What greater tribute to a teacher than to have a pupil emulate by example? I think that's one of the most important lessons that he taught, that being a citizen has responsibilities and implies taking part in government, no matter how small. Along with that, he felt we all had talents that God had given us, and it was our responsibility to use them, whether to better ourselves or others. And I often said that, you know, he taught us that education was extremely important, but if we didn't have integrity, it didn't mean anything. And I think all of us who went to Bailey's Harbor Grade School so profited by this man's wisdom. And I'm so glad so many of the Visti family is here today. So would you please stand up, Visti family? Thank you. And here are other pictures of Arnold and Clara Hickey with their daughter Betty Lou and Doug when they were young. Yes. Pardon? You want to speak? I'm going to have the microphone because we can't hear without the microphone.
Nancy Bernowski. When I first heard about this reunion, Arnold was one of the first people I thought of, and amen to the respect. I remember that every single student that went through Bailey's Harbor Elementary did not say yes or yeah, it was yes sir and yes ma'am, to the point that when we graduated elementary school and went on to high school, the teachers could notice which were the students from Bailey's Harbor because of the respect for their elders and their considerate way of addressing them. And that's all kudos to Arnold.
Yes, we never, I mean, I wouldn't think of calling him Arnold for anything. He was always Mr. Visti, and it was yes, sir, and no, sir. Class of 1980, is there anybody here from that last class? That was, Leanne, was that the last official year of classes for all the grades? No. For the school period. That was the last year. 1966 was the last year, okay, for all the grades. And Kay Zahn Coben, right? She told me, she just reminded me that, well, she was Kay Zahn. I don't know your Elliot, that's right. Barbara is Coben, right? Yes, okay. Well, she just mentioned to me, too, that the oldest living Bailey's Harbor grade school person is Margaret Zahn, right? And is she's in a nursing home somewhere? Okay. 99. Oh, wow. 99 years old. So this was the last actual class. But then they did hold classes up at Bailey's Harbor School. I think they had like a couple grades and a preschool one year, so. Yes? I want you to hear, I want them. Okay. Okay. Let's get him the microphone because we can't hear you. There's so many. Yeah, Bob could tell us.
That's the year that we finally merged all of the elementary districts with the Gibraltar Union Free High School. Up until that point, we had Gibraltar Union Free High School and all of these small elementary districts. And that is the actual year of the founding of Gibraltar as we know it today. That's in '66.
Bob, how many grades were still going at that school?
Okay, when I got there, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 grades. So we had first grade. As you face the building, to the right was first grade, to the left was second grade. When you went up the steps, third grade to the right, and fourth grade to the left. Then in I'm trying to remember exactly which year, they put the portable building next to the school. That was for special ed, but then that got to be a little difficult, so I actually moved out of the main building into the portable building, which was rather interesting. I was supposedly the building head or the principal, and I had no access to the telephone or anything of the sort. Yeah, it was probably better that way. Well, the one thing that I didn't have to do once I did that, which was rather interesting, we hear all these glorious stories of the school and stuff. For several years, until they got the furnaces fixed, I would have to get to school at the latest by 7:30 in the morning because I would have to check the furnaces to make sure both of them were working, because there was one furnace for the new part and one furnace for the old part. And to check the furnace in the old part, you went down in the furnace room where there was a light directly above the door, but the furnace was on the other end of the room. And what you would have to do if the furnace wasn't running, you would have to hit the reset button. But you would have to reach back in behind the furnace, no light, next to the damper, and then the reset button didn't have a cover plate over it. You just had this button sticking out in the dark, and you would hit it. And one morning, I hit it, and as I hit it, the furnace backfired, and the draft was right in my face, so you can imagine what I looked like with the furnace backfiring. Well, I couldn't leave school because I was the only one there, and the first bus came at 7:30 in the morning. So I had to wait for somebody else to get there to make sure the kids that got off the bus at 7:30 had the building was open. And then I had to drive back to Ellison Bay and get cleaned up and come back to teach.
I think my son was in that last year when Gibraltar closed.
We used to have manual arts down in that basement, and also home ec. I still remember I never finished my apron. I never got it done. I was not a very handy woman when it came to those kinds of things. Okay. The McCarter Library. Now, do you remember when it was the McCarter Library for a while? Yes. Part of the building was also used as meeting rooms for the town. I remember that, and I also remember, but I don't know the years it was a library. Was it longer than 5 years? Probably not, right? I don't know. I have no idea. It's a stately queen of a building. This is now what it looks like, and Christy and Caleb just got done painting it, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's just a queen of a building. It's well built. Before that, Lauren and Annie owned it and kept it up so wonderfully too. But you know, it's just, I hope it's there for another 100 years. So it's been wonderful. And I want to just, in ending today, yes, okay.
Before, when you're talking about Mr. Visti and teaching respect, and Lynn mentioned about wanting people to go forward into the community and do something, as I looked at that picture when the town board meetings were held there, that was when Lynn and I joined the town board. We were the first 2 women on the board. It was interesting, to say the least. But it was kind of nice to think back that what Arnold had tried to instill in us. And in those days, it was mostly for the men because men moved forward and did that. But it was an interesting time, and the first 2 women on the town board, and not the last, that's continued, and that's a good thing. But it was an amazing experience of going not only to school there for 8 years, but then serving on the town board and using that facility for 2 years.
Thank you. But I just also want to add that I had Darlene Duquesne for a teacher, and I was telling her at the reunion yesterday, I said, Darlene, you never knew this, but I loved you so much that I remember going home from school and putting DD on the garage door, and my brother Lee he said to me, you're in love with Danny DeHaas. And it wasn't. I was in love with Darlene Duquesne. I thought she was the most wonderful teacher. And I just, like I said, yeah, it was, all of you here. I mean, and I wish we had the time because every one of you has an experience that you can talk about. And, you know, yours were as rich as what ours were. And like I said, we lived in a special time. We didn't know it because we didn't realize the freedom that we had. And I want to end by saying we didn't have a prayer before we started, but I think, you know, we'll just end with a prayer. And I just want to say thank you, God, for this wonderful gathering of people and that we have time to share the memories that we had with each other and with this school and with this town. And we thank you for our parents who raised us and for our grandparents, most of who were immigrants to this country, that we were given the opportunity to have these wonderful experiences in a small town. Thank you. Amen.